Welcome to English for Engineers. I'm your host, Olivia Augustin. Tune in as I dig deep into all things technical English, business English, and international business communication to bring you a lifetime of knowledge in a digestible format. Hello, friends and fellow engineers. Today's guest at the English for Engineers podcast is Johan Bel, an experienced technical consultant with a focus on practical solutions and a strong affinity with systems engineering and asset management. He's mainly active in the field of industrial automation and instrumentation throughout the entire life cycle. And through his work experience and training, he has a lot of experience in collaborating with various professional disciplines at all levels throughout the organization, and that's why he has a lot of experience regarding communication. Welcome, Johan. Pleasure to have you. Good to have you here. Do you want to give us a bit of background, what you're doing, where you're working, maybe how we connected? And then we start with the questions I've prepared for you.
Yeah, well, thanks for your introduction. Well, I'm Johan, living in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. I have a background in electrical engineering. Started in my middle school, just a practical school, and I worked there for like 5 years in a small electrical installation firm here in the neighborhood. And after 5 years of work, I started working at my age of 16. I made a decision to study, to do my bachelor in the evening, and that's where I think we on some kind firstly met, or at least I met your husband, Marcus Augustine. That's where I became a part of Kroon Wolter and Dross, engineering firm in the Netherlands, and we were building infrastructure projects together with Strabag. And I did my bachelor my bachelor electrical engineering in the evening hours. After that, I completed the study. I swapped from job and go to E.ON Benelux, starting up a coal power plant in the Maasvlakte, Rotterdam.
Wow.
Yes, also a nice project with a lot of foreign people from Germany, England, a very big project.
Let me just interrupt you there because I already have a question before I forget it.
Of course.
So you started doing your bachelor with Marcus at the reconstruction of the A15 13 years ago. So if I remember correctly, that was one of the biggest or the biggest infrastructural project in Europe back at the time.
Yes. It was a design, build, finance and maintain contract. One of at that moment, the biggest contract in, at least in the Netherlands, and one of the first contracts in which the contractor is responsible for the complete design, build and maintain for 25 years. So this was a new kind of contract in the market, where the designing party also needed to adopt life cycle decisions and think about making a system longer than only the span of the guarantee. So also thinking about the complete life cycle. Yeah.
Was this also the first time you kind of came in contact with systems engineering?
Yeah, I think.
Or was
I think
that later?
No, I think this project was for me a real pressure cooker.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I came from like a practical way of working. I was just a service engineer outside, doing my bachelor in the evening and growing to a more engineering function within the organization. This was also one of the projects in which the main the client, Rijkswaterstaat, our the roadbeheerder, how do you say that in English?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm just Googling it. Rijkswaterstaat. It's something so
authority, I think.
Yeah, it's a part of the Dutch Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management.
Yeah. This is our client, and they in this contract they said that everybody needs to work with system engineering. So it was new for the company, for the contractors. It was new for the market, for the sector, and there was also a difficulty that we were working with German people who also weren't used to working within a Dutch environment. So this was just a
Exactly.
pressure cooker of new techniques, new way of working. Everything was
Different
combining. Yeah,
cultures,
yeah,
different languages,
yeah,
different
yeah,
backgrounds, different working cultures even.
yeah,
There were a couple of interesting episodes that I remember that Marcus came home and was like, wow, that's so different. And then
yeah,
just completely different point of view how you attack a problem or
yeah,
even
yeah.
between humans. Interesting. And then you switched to the next project, coal
Yeah, there was a
power plant.
coal power plant in the Netherlands, which was built on the Maasvlakte.
Hmm. That's
And
also in Rotterdam for those who are not from the Netherlands.
yeah, it's one of the pieces of land we as the Dutch created, and there was a coal power plant which the engineering part of the control system of the power plants needed to be finished. So I came in there to finish this kind of engineering and start up the power plant. And this was also in a environment with different kind of teams, cultures, languages. It was also maybe a pressure cooker.
And somehow a completely different kind of project because infrastructure, doing a highway and then a coal power plant.
Yeah,
So
but
what
I'm
did you
very
do at those projects that you
uh,
could serve in both?
I think I'm very a simple guy, so I always think my specialism is industrial automation, and if it is a ventilation system or a complete burner system for a power plant, it's all about understanding what technique is behind it and how you need to program it and talking and understanding. So I think those things have a lot in common. It is normal
They
to
do.
focus on the things which are not in common, but I think there's a lot in common in this kind of projects, and it's like yeah, for me it wasn't a problem to go, and I want to investigate everything. So for me it was really nice to be in a new environment, learning things, learning everything about burning coal and producing energy and grid stability. It was really nice for me to be in another environment. Yeah.
So you're an old school engineer. You have a new system, you want to understand the system,
Yeah.
and then you want to work the system.
Maybe then the fun is over. If I know how the system works, yeah,
Exactly.
then
Then it starts getting boring. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
the fun part is figuring it out
yeah,
and the
yeah,
puzzle and bringing all the pieces together. I'm the same. As soon as it gets everyday business and boring, then I'm gone. Yeah, interesting.
yeah.
Because otherwise we talk about all your projects all day long.
Mm-hmm.
My first question, because it should also be a bit of interest to the listeners, not only to me. In your experience of working with interdisciplinary teams, but also international teams, and even inside the Netherlands, even if it's the same nationality, there's so many different cultures here and backgrounds. What are the key communication challenges that you have encountered? What are those, if all the projects together and all the people together, what is the number one communication problem that you see?
I think it's very simple, but it's a challenge is that you must understand the other party. Yeah, so the challenge is that we don't understand each other and don't want to invest time to understand each other. Maybe a few simple examples is that the German culture is really hierarchical, and our Dutch culture is really open and everybody can give input. And that I know that the German culture is really hierarchical. I need to approach my colleague from Germany on a different manner. And not understanding that is the biggest challenge. So language is one thing, but you need to understand their culture. How do they work together? What are their rituals? How do they talk to each other? Is it formal, informal? That I think that's the biggest challenge. Yeah.
How is that for you as a Dutch person to work with that German hierarchy? How does that feel? I mean, it's one thing to know it, it's a different thing to work in that environment.
I think when I know it, it's okay. It is something I think in the Dutch we can use a little bit of that because sometimes in our projects everybody can have an opinion and the project is going all the way. So I think we can just use a little bit of this
Hierarchy.
yeah, it can help us in the projects. And I think, that's I think you need both in the projects. Hey? You need a culture, an open culture, so everybody can give their opinion. But at the end, somebody has to say, okay, we go this way or that way, and that sometimes is missing in our project.
In the Netherlands, somebody needs to make a decision.
Yeah.
And how do you find out what kind of culture your colleagues from other countries have? Because Netherlands and Germany, they're neighbors. We know each other a bit, how we interact. But how do you handle working together with other cultures when you have to work with them for the first time?
I think just talk to them and ask and be curious how things work in their country and I'm working also with Belgian people, and we speak the same language, but also there you see little differences. Just ask why things are going different and try to imagine and I think also make jokes about it helps in the way of working. Yeah.
That's really, really good advice, actually, to have fun while figuring out how other people think and how they do their thing.
Yeah.
You mentioned rituals.
Mm-hmm.
To learn about other people's rituals in their work culture. What is a Dutch ritual that other nations should know about when they're working together with the Dutch?
Good question. I don't know. Yeah, good question.
Let me ask it in a different way. What were Germans and Austrians and even people from Belgium most surprised to learn?
I think that people in the German, if they can make a decision, if they have the in our culture, people can make a decision. Mm-hmm. I had an example in my project team. I was a technical manager for a project, and above me I had a project manager. And I was in a technical meeting, and I made a decision. I said, okay, this, for example, this door needs to be green. And my counterpart was from Belgium, and he was really upset and thinking about it, and he called my project manager and was telling to him, Johan is making a decision and it isn't in his power to make this decision, but I had the how do you say, the mandate to make the decision.
It was his responsibility.
Yeah. It was my responsibility to take the decision, but he wasn't. In Belgium, it was like you have to go to the guy above you to take him with you with the decision, and in the Netherlands,
you just make the decision.
You make the decisions, yeah.
So you should have asked him, "Are you okay with a green door?" And then he would say, "Yes, of course," and then he would give the input. Okay.
And for him, it was an not done to make a decision.
Overlook him, kind of.
Yeah. So that's
interesting.
I think this is some of the thing, yeah.
Things, rituals. So something that I feel is very Dutch is an after work borrel. We have to translate that. It's going out for just maybe a beer or even and some snacks, finger food. Are a lot of decisions made at that kind of meetings, informal meetings in the Netherlands?
If you talk about this kind of rituals, we have a lot of them at the office.
Mm-hmm. Tell me more.
We have at Friday we have Air Friday, so that's the
Air Friday.
Air Friday. This is I don't think I have to explain it, but every Friday we eat snacks. This is one of our rituals. And we have a Thursday we have a borrel at the end of the day. I think
after work drinks.
Yeah, after work drinks. I think this is also good for the team bonding, for building a good team.
Yeah. So I think in the Netherlands it's really important you don't have to be best friends with your coworkers, but you do a little bit of semi-private stuff directly after work. That's my experience as well.
I think also when we had Corona in the Netherlands, a lot of people were missing the coffee talks.
Oh, so yes.
At the coffee machine, you will talk about your projects and you will meet your colleagues and hear about what is in the project and make little decisions and talk about stuff. And this was really missing. And I don't know if this is a really Dutch ritual, but at the coffee machine, a lot of project problems are solved.
Yes, definitely. That was. It's interesting that you mentioned that during the pandemic, because that was something that Marcus did a lot with his colleagues. So the owners of the company, they sent out little packages with nuts and little snacks and some IPA beer or some specialty beer. And then they had their after work borrel, that after work drink. They had it on Zoom together. And when we told that to friends in Germany and Austria, also like from different backgrounds, engineers and non-engineers, they were like, wow, that's such a good idea. They didn't even have the idea, at least the companies where our friends did work. So yeah, that's something really, really Dutch and really important in the Dutch culture.
Yeah.
I had a question on the tip of my tongue. Anyway, let's go. Oh yeah, you mentioned so the Belgian people, the Germans, but in the Netherlands there are also a lot of other cultures.
Yeah.
Really tons of other nations, original, as native languages, cultures. Why do you think is that working relatively good in the Netherlands?
I think about it, that everybody has this open culture, open mind in our, this is just part of our culture. But you can also see the cultural difference and within the Netherlands, as you mentioned. For example, below the rivers in Brabant or Limburg, two of our province, they are less direct as in Rotterdam. Here everybody is saying what they think, and I don't think this is always a good point. And if I work with people from Brabant or Limburg, this is more like our Belgian colleagues. They are not telling everything and aren't so direct. And I think if you go more to Amsterdam, for example, this is also the culture is also different than Rotterdam. So only at like 50 kilometers difference, there is a lot of difference in culture and
how we communicate. Maybe it's because it's such a huge harbor. Maybe it is because people from I don't know how many nations live here together for I don't know how many years. Maybe it is because of the multicultural environment that we have to be direct.
Yeah.
In communication, it's called high context and low context communication. For example, Japanese people, they are high context. They say a lot without saying it. So you have to read between the lines. That you need a lot of context to understand what they're meaning. Yeah, Rotterdam is definitely a low context society. It is what you hear is what you get.
Yeah.
Let me ask you another question. So we already mentioned systems engineering, and that you came in contact with that maybe around 15 years ago with the A15 reconstruction. The A15 is the highway here. Maybe just to give listeners an idea why it was one of the biggest or the biggest infrastructural project back then in Europe. Used to be 8 lanes, the highway, I think. 6 or 8 lanes?
6 lanes, yeah.
6 lanes? And how many lanes were there after the reconstruction, after that 5 years?
It was depending on where you look.
Where, but on the widest point?
I think it is 10 lanes, so 5 lanes every direction. 40 kilometers of highway which is reconstructed. Also not only asphalt but also the traffic management system. In the Netherlands we have like on every 300 meters we have a portal with traffic signs on it, a dynamic traffic management system. We reconstructed 2 tunnels in the project.
Yeah, Botlek and Thomassen.
Yeah, and also built a new Botlek bridge.
Yes.
Which is also really complex because you have the Botlek car tunnel, traffic tunnel, road tunnel. Then you have a little space of nothing. Then you had the old Botlekbrug, and next to that you had a train tunnel and a tunnel for also a tunnel for pipelines to for example, Germany. You have
to connect the oil and gas pipelines from the harbor.
Yeah, so I think there was only a little space to build a new bridge on. So this was a really complex project in the, I think, the most complex area of the Dutch
of the country.
Yeah, of the country. It was middle in the harbor with the cables and pipelines and stakeholders, and it was amazing project.
Yeah. Really amazing project, just hearing my husband's stories back then was awesome. And that Botlek Bridge is huge. Was it one of the biggest of its kind?
Yeah, I
back
think
then as
so. It
well?
was one of the biggest and one of the fastest bridges, which
Yeah.
was going up and down because of
It's 120 seconds, I thought.
yeah,
90 or
yeah,
120, one
yeah,
of those two numbers.
yeah,
Fast.
yeah,
And it's the
yeah,
size of 2 football fields.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's yeah, I can only encourage everyone who is listening to this episode, Google it. I will put links into the podcast description.
Nice. Yeah.
But in that part of the Netherlands where we live, Johan Bel and I, it is a paradise for every engineer. It is the projects, even the 10-year, 15-year-old projects are just mind-blowing, awe-inspiring. It's just awesome. Wherever you drive and go, there are cool projects. Yeah, absolutely. So back to systems engineering, asset management. Could you briefly, I know it's another topic, it's a topic for another 3 hours, but could you somehow really, really briefly explain what systems engineering is?
Well, system engineering is a methodology to, I think, bestly explained to build complex systems. So you begin at the high level and seeing a system as a black box, and you make little systems of it, and just every engineering phase you go deeper and deeper into the system. I think this is maybe the short description about systems engineering. Yeah.
Okay. How is it different to, let's call it, for the sake of being easy, simple, and old school engineering? We draw, we design something, we make a drawing, we describe it in a technical report, and then we build it. How is systems engineering different to?
It's a really explicit way of working. So you have to make your decisions explicit. You have to design them, verify them, and just go to the loop. And at every stage, you will connect with your stakeholders or your customer. So this way, you get a higher customer engagement. So your customer is with you the complete process. For example, if you make a system as a black box, you design it as a black box, your design is more controllable. So if you go a little bit to the left or to the right, it will cost, every stage it will cost more. So if you let your customer review or do an inspection or something like that at this design phase, you will minimize the failure costs. Also in the realization phase. So you build, for example, from a black box to a component and on the design phase. And then you go from component to system, and every stage you will do your test, you involve your customer, so it is a way to manage your complex projects.
Involving the customer at every single step really helps. It's half German, half Dutch, but not English. Really helps to reduce costs because you don't have to go back that far to make changes if the customer is not happy with the direction you designed to. That kind of engineering or project management or that kind of doing projects does require a lot of communication, especially because not all the stakeholders have a tech background. So how do you adapt to all those different communication styles? Because you have, as an engineer, you don't only have to communicate with other engineers with maybe different native languages, but you also have to communicate with lawyers, with bank people, with financing people, with all the neighbors around your project who have their own background. How do you communicate in a way that every stakeholder understands the project goals and where it should head?
I think this is the most difficult part of the projects we are in. And this is also because of the way we are working in the Netherlands, that our government is setting projects in a market on a really high functional level. So as a contractor or an engineering firm, we need to talk to people in our government organizations which don't have enormous technical background. So this is the most difficult part in all our projects. And I think for me personal, what for me very helpful is that I've been at my 16th, I was already working outside and was used to talk to people from every layer of the organization, just from the guys and girls outside within the management of projects. And it's making things really simple. In the Dutch we say you have to tell it in Jip en Janneke taal. I think
How can I translate that? You have to, the proper translation, but it's the fancy translation, is you have to explain it in layman's terms. But the Dutch version even says you have to explain it to the regular Joe.
For example, I have two little children. If I can tell them what I'm doing, then everybody else will understand it. So I think also Jip en Janneke are two cartoons for little children. So you have to explain it in their language and make it just simple. And I think what also helps is spare the details.
Spare the details?
Because a lot of technical people are blue people, so they are really into the details. For example, I'm really a red and yellow guy, and spare the details. Make it simple.
That's excellent advice, because I think that is a problem a lot of engineers have. They have a love for details, which is really good when they're working on a project. Mm-hmm. It saves life. It's like lives. It really helps if a bridge is not collapsing. Mm-hmm. Thanks for paying attention to detail, but not when you're talking with stakeholders. So yes, spare the details. That's maybe I call this podcast episode like spare the details. That's a good title. What else you just said something else that was interesting. You said a lot of interesting things, but something I wanted to ask you about. Yes, spare the details. What else did you say? Explain it easily, like your kids can understand it. Oh, I know. You were mentioning colors. What are those colors? You said people are in blue and you are more yellow and red.
Yeah, I don't know what is the English word for it, but it's the disk analysis. So you have all kinds of people. You have like the red people who are more dominant in projects.
Like a personality test based on the four main colors. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And what are red people? Detail-loving people?
No. Red are more on the foreground. So you have like two axes, one on introvert and extrovert, and one axis I think on. I don't know where the other axis is on, but for example, red people can be dominant, and are on the foreground, and yellow people are more on the also extrovert, but more on the creative way of extrovert.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is, I think, for me, this is one of the insights what also really helped me in communication with people. If I understand what kind of person you are, so for example, you are about details, then I need to talk in details.
Yes.
But if I'm talking to a red person like myself, for example, I need to talk in goals and where do we go and how fast do we go, and I need to skip the details because otherwise this person is bored out. Yeah. And if I talk to a yellow person, I need to talk about creativity and ideas and take him in.
Again, no matter what kind of model you take and if you believe that they work or don't work, again, you have to understand how people think.
Yeah.
And what inspires and what drives them.
Yeah.
Reminds me of a couple of years ago, I had a team and I was sending out emails and no one read the emails because my Austrian way of writing emails was all the information in one email. Yeah. And then I was working with Dutch and I learned that I have to split that one email into 3 short ones. Then people read it. And then I had one colleague and she just never read any text messages. And she bluntly said, I don't have time to read them. So I started sending her voice messages and then everything was good. Yeah. It's sometimes you have to learn how other people's brains work, and
also make
to reach them.
Yeah, and also make appointments about it. So talk to each other. Shall we communicate? How do we check in? Just
do you prefer emails or WhatsApps or whatever? Yeah. Voice messages or written messages,
Yeah. And it's also, I think, an age thing. If I see, I'm 36, so I'm sometimes feeling already a little bit old. But if I see how my younger colleagues are communicating, and they are, for example, afraid to call. So they do everything on WhatsApp and sending texts like. And if I look to my older colleagues, they are all calling like me and less on email and calling. So. If I want to be successful, I need to adapt to their way of working. So every person a different approach of communication.
But I think that also makes the difference between a regular employee and someone who is in a leadership position. If you're in a leadership position, you have to learn how your team is communicating. if you're just a regular engineer who comes into the office at 8:30 and leaves at 5, yeah, you can. You probably don't have to if you never want to grow in your career. So you worked in projects, because that was in your intro, you worked in projects involving both hardware and software.
Mm-hmm.
When the word software pops out, my immediate thought goes to the IT crowd, to that British TV show. How do you approach managing culturally diverse teams in such projects where the cultural differences might even influence the problem-solving or decision-making process?
Yeah, I think this is, if it is hardware, software, electrical, civil, they all have their own way of working and their own culture. And most of the time, my job is putting people together on one table, let them talk to each other, trying to understand why they do things. I really believe that nobody's going to work just to make shit of the project. Everybody's going with good intentions to a project. So with this mindset, I always go, if there's a problem, I try to fix it. I try to understand why they do things, why they are doing things the way they do. And just by asking people from out of my heart, from out of a good intention, trying to understand why they do things and then put people together, 99% of the times there's coming a solution.
So end of the day, it doesn't matter what kind of engineer you are, how good you are at engineering, what kind of project you're working in, it always comes down to the human factor.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I think this is the most beautiful part of engineers. They all love their job. They all have affinity with the project they made. They are all proud of the project. So this is one thing they all have in common. Everybody's I told you in the conversation we had before, my wife is getting really not upset, how do you say it, bored about it. Every time we drive to the country, I tell her, this project I did this on, this project I did this on. So, and I think every engineer has this thing that they are proud of the work they do.
Yeah. I even, at the beginning of our conversation, when we were talking about the A15 and the Botlek Bridge, Thomason Tunnel, Botlek Tunnel, I really had to hold back myself because I wanted to, and now I do it anyway, I wanted to say, yes, and the Botlek Tunnel and the Thomason Tunnel was my husband's project, and the Botlek Bridge actually was the project of a colleague of mine that I went to engineering college with. So all those, it is a human connection that you have to buildings and projects, and that, at the end, that was what makes engineering amazing and awesome.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah.
So even though a lot of engineers started out in engineering because they thought they don't have a knack for human interaction and they like numbers and statistics and they were hoping they could hide behind the screen and just do calculations. No, I think we are in one of the most human-centered businesses you can imagine, because everything we do, everything we develop and build is for other human beings. Yeah. Johan, thank you so much. I fear that if I don't end that conversation now, we will record. We will still be recording in 2 hours or 3 hours. Thank you so much for your expertise and your tips. Really, really valuable tips regarding communication in international teams. Thank you so much for being here in that podcast episode with me. I'm going to put a lot of links into the podcast description. What is your favorite way if people want to contact you? Let's say, there are not enough engineers around the whole world. Everybody is looking for new people. If somebody says, wow, Johan sounds like a really amazing guy, maybe there's some place for me in his organization. How can people contact you? What's your favorite way?
They can, I think the favorite way is to just send me a message at LinkedIn.
Okay, perfect.
I try to be active there, so
Good. So I'll put your LinkedIn ID, how do you say it? The link to your LinkedIn page into the podcast description. Great! That was it for today. That was English for Engineers. Talk to you soon.